we're very data driven, right? Zillow is a very big data company. So we look at things, we look at conversion, how well we're transacting, and we look at some precursors. So what typically ends up in a transaction? Well, first and foremost, from the very top of the funnel, you got to answer the phone. Right. And that's a complete controllable, right? And you guys as a team, and I'm proud to say it because I get to work and partner with you guys, do a spectacular job controlling the controllables. So from the very beginning of answering the call down to we've got something called ALM, which is appointment location motivation, which is essentially we got to ask for that appointment on the first call.
Right.
So often I listen to 50, 60, 70, 80 calls every week. So often I hear people will take the steering wheel, right, of this conversation as a salesperson. They're like, you know what? I can't do this. Jack, you drive, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. I want you to drive this conversation. We allow that to happen for lead conversion purposes. It's not great.
Hey, Jack Lehr and Lehr's Lehr Podcast. So super excited to have our Zillow Flex growth advisor, Patrick Carter, all the way from Denver, Colorado, but he flew in here just to see me. Welcome.
Thanks. Hey, thanks for having me. Can't wait to be here, talk through real estate, what that means to me, I think what that means to you guys, and where we're going to go moving forward.
Excellent. So our team is with Zillow. We were a market priced, we paid for leads for many, many years, and we performed at a pretty high level. So Zillow invited us into this Flex program. And I'd like to maybe talk about that a little bit later in our time here together. But Patrick, you come from the real estate world, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but I personally got my license 22 years ago, Jack. As a 19-year-old kid, I'll do the math for, let's save you guys some time, that makes me 41. That same year, I got my real estate instructor's license, so I used to teach pre-license, post-license, and CE courses for licensure down in the Sunshine State of Florida. My family happens to own real estate schools, okay. So it's not like I had like a big choice in careers I was going to enter. Super happy that it did happen to go into the family business. Love being in real estate, love what we can do for people in home ownership. Found my way here to Zillow about 3 years ago, and now have been in the Flex program for the last about a year and a half now. Absolutely love it. The hand-in-hand partnership that you and I have, and I've got with some of my other teams across the country, having the ability of really being able to affect their business, help train their teams, and see the best growth we possibly can together.
So Patrick, so you got started in real estate, parents teaching, and like, did you get your license to become like in the sales side, or what did you do?
Yeah, so initially I wanted to take the world by storm, be a salesperson. I was a dedicated buyer's agent for many years down in Florida. When I was a real estate agent, there was no Zillow. There was no Realtor.com, no Redfin. You couldn't just go online and search your heart's content around content and being able to look at listings online. And to be completely honest, when Zillow first came around, I was like, well, what is this company? Is it Zulu, Zala? What is it? I didn't know what it was. Yeah. I knew you could find out what your home was worth. It was kind of accurate at the time. Having been able to learn more about the platform and being able to try and leverage technology for lead generation and being able to convert those leads is something that became really, really attractive to me. So that's why 3 years ago I said, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and take the leap. I'm going to use everything I've got real estate knowledge-wise and jump into this real estate world with Zillow hand in hand.
So let's go back to the origin. So you're working as a buyer's agent. Like what part of Florida?
Central Florida, so primarily like Melbourne Beach, kind of close to the Cocoa Beach area, and Ron John's surf shop is what most people know it from.
Yeah. I've heard of that. So you were out there as a buyer agent, and then you really didn't have a lot of like online abilities. Did you still have a book back then where you opened a book for your listings?
Yeah, so probably day 2 or day 3 on the job, my broker literally pulls out our phone book, which back then was like yay big, pulled it open and just pointed and said, go. And I said, what do you mean go? Go where? No, go with your eyes down to the phone book and start dialing. So it was smiling and dialing. Like if you wanted to try and find buyers, you're calling people. You are prospecting. You're doing open houses. You're door knocking. All of the stuff that we should still be doing as agents today. Yeah. The advent, to be completely honest, of internet leads has been something that's kind of changed the game for all of us in the industry and has made some of this not outdated, but it complements it really, really well.
Okay. So we'll fast forward a little bit and we'll talk about like the online leads and like Zillow being one of the most recognized name. There's another one out there, but Zillow is probably number one. It's awfully close between you and the other one. But anyway, it's one of the most recognized. People go to this portal called Zillow because Zillow is very recognized. They're all over TV ads, you name it. and they go to this portal, and they trust the Zillow name, right?
Yeah.
And I want to talk about this a little bit because, in the real estate world, we have a lot of folks that get upset with Zillow.
Yeah.
Right? They get upset with Zillow because, like, they're a competitor. They have a brokerage license now, but doesn't somebody that like we're a real broker, but like I have friends at every Dagburn brokerage there isn't that a competitor potentially as well?
You would kind of think it is, but how we like to view it and how I think most of the market should kind of view Zillow as a partnership.
Yeah.
We've made the world a little bit easier. Would it be nice to control the keys? So like we used to control the keys to the castle, right? If someone wanted to come in and see a house, they didn't have a Zillow. They didn't have a Realtor.com to go to where they could search. They had to find a realtor. They had to find one in a Homes and Land magazine, or they had to come to your office, or they had to call a yard sign. So have we circumvented that system a little bit by having leads more accessible? Yes. But where we think and where we want to kind of go with this moving forward is our premier agents. We want to partner with you guys. You guys are agents. We don't have agents on the ground. We don't have anybody buying and selling real estate. We are in our local MLSs, which is how we get and syndicate our feeds, which we kind of have to be. But what we want to be able to do is partner with the best agents across the country that are going to make our name look good. We're not going to go out and just partner with any Joe Schmo out there and say, oh, you got a license and a heartbeat? That sounds great.
Yeah.
We want to find people that are going to go out there, they're going to sell houses, do it the right way, and try and help as many people into home ownership as humanly possible.
Good. So like with Zillow or these online portals, the one thing that a human can't compete against is the ability to get that information very, very quick. So like I go to Zillow and I'm searching for a home, and like say I want to buy something in Scottsdale, Arizona, and I don't have an agent out there, and I go to the Zillow and I'm starting to search, and I go, oh my gosh, I can buy a house for $800,000 and this size of a home in this area. I have instantaneous access to that information.
Yeah.
But you guys partner with agents because the relationships are typically what drives a transaction.
100%.
Correct?
Yeah. They've never bought a house from Zillow directly. That's where everyone goes to search for the houses. That's why they made an SNL skit about us, which is awesome if you haven't seen it.
Yeah, right.
But people, it's always going to be a people business. You either have to be boots on the ground. You have to be, hey, I am the local guy in my market. I'm the one that knows how to work these deals. I'm the one that's closed these deals in the past. You got to work with me. We realize that, and that's why we go out of our way to try and handpick the best agents that we can to partner with in these markets.
Yeah, so it's funny. Like we're involved in a lot of different like coaching programs and folks out there that are at very high level, but also like on the Facebook groups for the different types of real estate professionals that, some love Zillow, some hate Zillow, but I think it's some hate high interest rates, some hate low interest rates. There's a benefit to everything, and what's confusing to me is that Zillow is this incredible platform, and I'm just going to share our experience.
Yeah.
Because whether you love or hate Zillow, it's an incredible platform that spent so much Dagburn money to brand that people trust and go to this platform. So why would you fight against that?
Yeah, you can go one of two ways, right? To your point, you can go one of two ways on anything. There's the easy way of saying, this is new, this is different, I don't like it, it's challenging the norms. Or you can embrace it and be like, hey, how can I leverage this?
Yeah.
How can I make my business better by utilizing this great tool? Let's be honest. It's really pretty. I work for Zillow. Sometimes when I'm laying around in bed at night before I go to bed, I pull up stuff. I'm looking at I have no intention on moving to all these different places, but I look at stuff in Houston, look at stuff in Pittsburgh, look at stuff at Eugene, Oregon.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful website. It's presented well. It's easy use, easy access for buyers. So that's what we try and leverage on our end. And that's why I think the partnership that we can then provide with teams that are really able to embrace that can flourish. Because like, you know what? We're doing a lot of the hard work for you. We've got all the software engineers that have built out this great website. Yeah. Let us work for you. So that's really how these things really start to take off. And that's why I'm called a growth advisor, right? I want to help my team grow as far as Zillow goes. I want to help grow Zillow, but I want you guys to grow as well. Yeah. On the flex side of our business, we don't see anything at all unless you guys are closing deals.
And so everybody understands what Zillow Flex is all about. So Zillow makes the investment and puts it on their balance sheet to go out and purchase the leads. And the only way those opportunities The only way you receive payment, or Zillow receives payment, is a success fee.
Yeah.
So an agent helps a buyer or seller transact, and settlement is when Zillow gets paid, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what the Flex program's more basically about.
Yeah, so that's going to be the biggest differentiator between Flex and market-based pricing. Whereas market-based pricing, you purchase the amount of leads where you want to purchase and whatever zip codes,
Yeah.
and you would collect the full amount. On our end, we're giving you our collateral on the front end, which is why on this side of the business, we do have a higher standard. Because like you're kind of playing with house money at that point. We're like, hey, if you're playing with our house money, there's certain things that we would hope that you can do, and there's certain ways we want you to be able to transact, and certain numbers you got to hit. And the ones that can do it, I mean, the sky's the limit.
It's pretty amazing, and we've experienced that where at one time we had a little bit larger team, and the amount of opportunities that are coming through on Flex were just it was crazy. Like we couldn't keep up with it, so we decided, hey, let's just back it off a little bit and do a better job with the ones that are coming in. Because if I give 35 or 40 or 50 leads, Zillow leads to each agent, everybody thinks, oh my gosh, I have all those leads. Well, you can't take care of them. And all of a sudden your conversion goes way down. You're not able to service your clients at a high level. Because if I have 50 or 60 people I'm working with over a 30, 60-day period, there's a good chance I'm going to be a master of none. Yeah. Right?
Exactly. Yeah, I affectionately call those people 50 call Paul. The guy who's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take 50 calls and I'm just going to grab the lowest hanging fruit I possibly can, which in theory as a numbers game works, right?
Yeah.
But it's not the vision. It's not what we want. We want the experience to be when somebody comes over and we get them to one of our premier agents, they have got the best opportunity for home ownership that they have ever had. And that doesn't matter on price point, location, whatever the case may be. We want people to know when they go to Zillow, they hit the contact agent button, they're getting somebody they can trust that can get them into a home at the highest possible rate of conversion. That's why, like, candidly, when you and I talk in our meetings, how many times have I brought up, oh, cool, what's been your gross sales? Have I asked you guys that?
Never.
Yeah, it's just not really important to us. Will that come? Of course. Your closing deals, the gross sales are going to be there. What's important to us is more people that come back and say, you know what? I'm going to go tell so-and-so down the street. I'm going to tell someone else that's on my social media, hey, if you go to Zillow and hit the contact agent button, you're going to get a legit team in that area that's going to be able to help you.
Yeah, and that's what we've experienced where, somebody goes to the Zillow platform, they press that button, it says contact agent, they give a name, typically a phone number, and an email address, right, to be able to be contacted, and then there's a direct connection that takes place.
Yep.
So, and again, it's been my experience with Zillow is they want to make sure that you're taking great care of that client. That's why we're giving them what they want right away. They're going to Zillow, that Zillow spent all this money to drive this opportunity to, and like now I'm a consumer and I go there and I press that button and then it goes to Colin, Emily on our team or one of our teammates, and they like, how are they typically taking that phone call? Let's just share what that sounds like.
Yeah. So essentially, and this is how I've coached it, and we did some coaching a little bit earlier with the team here today.
Yeah.
But how it's typically going to go is we're very data driven, right? Zillow's a very big data company, so we look at things. We look at conversion, how well we're transacting, and we look at some precursors. So what typically ends up in a transaction? Well, first and foremost, from the very top of the funnel, you got to answer the phone,
right?
And that's a complete controllable, right? And you guys as a team, and I'm proud to say it because I get to work and partner with you guys, do a spectacular job controlling the controllables. So from the very beginning of answering the call down to we've got something called ALM, which is appointment location motivation, which is essentially we got to ask for that appointment on the first call.
Right.
So often I listen to 50, 60, 70, 80 calls every week. So often I hear people will take the steering wheel, right, of this conversation as a salesperson. They're like, you know what? I can't do this. Jack, you drive, Mr. and Mrs. Buyer. I want you to drive this conversation. And we allow that to happen for lead conversion purposes. It's not great.
Yeah.
So if anyone could take anything from any lead conversion platform at all, I don't care if it's Zillow, you can take this with you to anything else, is to try and get face-to-face, try and get that appointment. And the best way we can do that is to craft a good intro. If I were taking leads for your team, I am not. I love my job at Zillow. I'd like that to be fully known by everybody. I plan on keeping my job as long as they'll have me.
Yes.
But if I were to move to York, PA, and start taking leads for your team, my intro would sound something eerily similar to this. It would be like, "Hey, my name is Patrick Carter. I'm a Zillow recommended premier agent here in York, Pennsylvania. I do see you're looking at 123 Main Street today. When's a good time we can go take a look at it?"
Yes, it's asking for that appointment right away because you're giving them what they want. And sometimes, like, So we have a pretty high performing sales team that's well trained in the Sandler sales system, and not every realtor or sales professional is truly sales trained. But the one thing that's the biggest indicator is that face-to-face. And we talked about that, is getting face-to-face. And you guys, in your data, you see that make a big difference, right? Versus trying to get it sold over the phone.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation. Teams that have really high ALM rates typically succeed.
Appointment set.
Yeah. Whoever's setting the most
Setting
appointments,
that,
doing the highest rate of asking for appointments and setting them, are meeting the most folks. Naturally, if you meet more people, at some point you're going to write more contracts and have more deals under contract. There's a direct correlation that we can see driven through all of our data, and that's why we push those things so hard.
Yeah. And are there any other things that Zillow looks at to see how a team would perform, other than obviously the sale or the transaction? Like, what are some other things you guys are looking for?
Yeah, so for this, and this is something I try to coach to a lot. So for me, it's tale as old as time. As long as I've been in the industry, there's always been good agents, there's always been good teams, and there have been great agents and great teams. And the one differentiator to me is the follow-up game and accountability. If you have proper follow-up, if you have proper accountability, we're no longer just grabbing the low-hanging fruit. We're able to help every willing and able buyer that we possibly can and help them get through that journey to homeownership. Let's be honest. This is probably one of the most stressful times in most people's lives. They're like, where do I get my packing boxes? Oh, my kids are changing schools. There's a myriad of different things going on in their life throughout a move, throughout buying a house. The last thing they want to be concerned about is this home inspection going to fall through? Is my realtor getting me in touch with a great mortgage lender? Right. Is this going to appraise to value? Like, there's a lot of stressful things that go into the home buying process. I've been in the industry for a long, long time. I just bought another home 2 years ago, just moved in Colorado. It stressed me out. I knew everything to expect. Yeah. And even still, I'm thinking, oh, what if this appraisal isn't? What if the home inspection? All those little things are creeping up in my mind. So if we can help quiet the noise for our buyers and give them kind of like that white glove service where they know, you know what, Jack's got my back or Patrick's got my back or whoever I am working with has got my best interest in mind, you've got a buyer for life. You got a client for life that when they go to sell their house, they're going to reach back out and say, you know what, you made that last one so easy. Why would I go anywhere else? You're my person.
It is. And I think that's one of the things that gets very confusing for me is that, I hear the people that do complain against the online leads. And they go, oh, I got to pay this. I got to pay all this money for an online lead. I got to pay this success fee at the end of the day. And they don't realize that take great care of that client. Here's the thing. Birds of a feather flock together. The introductions that they make to help you grow your business and taking great care of them and having longevity. So, yes, we do pay that success fee. But let's turn one transaction or one client into multiples. Yeah. And that's the thing that I think that we all forget.
Yeah. It's super easy to be short-sighted with it, right? You're like, all right, if I wrote down the number right now, here's how much I have to pay for this lead. Yeah. But when we step back and start to think about it, you're like, you know what? But 3 months later, they introduce me to their aunt or their uncle. 4 years from now, they're going to want to downsize because they've got kids going off to college, whatever the case may be. If we can look at the long-term goals in real estate, we're going to do fine. And this has always been the case, right? Yeah. The short-sighted realtors typically have short-sighted careers in this industry. If you can't play the long game, if you can't prepare yourself for what's going to come in the future and start to build out your funnel for the future, there's a lot of other great careers. I mean, and there's a lot of other people that are still hiring in this country. So there's plenty of places you can get work. If you want to be successful, it's got to be the long game.
And I think that's one of the things that we all forget is that, or I think that Zillow and online portals bank on this. Well, you don't even have to bank on it. It's just reality. There's a good chance that, let's just say they transacted with you. Like you had a transaction through Zillow, and they would love to work with Patrick moving forward. But, and I'm not talking about Patrick in this scenario, but Patrick or a realtor does not typically keep in contact with them. They do not keep the relationship alive. They don't have the systems and processes to do that. And guess what happens in 4 or 5 years? Instead of going to Patrick for this transaction, they're pressing another Dagburn button, whether it be one of the portals or Zillow, and they're transacting with another agent that guess what? There's another success fee or a lead that's paid for.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that, again, you don't have to bank on it because it's reality.
Yeah, and that's always going to occur. That always has occurred. That's kind of what I'm going to kind of harken back to what I said earlier with like the long game and the follow-up is, and if you've been in this industry long enough, I've had it, I'm sure you've had it, where you called someone, you're like, hey, I feel like I'm doing a good job following up. You call someone, you're like, hey, I actually just resold my house like 3 weeks ago. And you're like, why didn't you call me? Did I not follow up enough? What was my problem? So if we can be accountable to ourselves to actually have proper follow-up, we're going to be able to keep people engaged in the buyer process. And let's be honest, the market's a little bit tough right now. There's a little bit of hesitancy around interest rates. There's a hesitancy around inventory, all that kind of stuff. We need to create sticky buyers and long-term buyers. So everything that we can do to be able to provide those types of services for our buyers is only going to behoove us moving forward and give us the real ability of differentiating ourselves in the market.
So let's talk about that differentiating. Let's give some great advice and a tip here that you shared with our team on that, keeping them sticky. So let's just say you're out with the client, and let's talk about that, because this is killer information that can help you keep that buyer or seller stuck to you without the obligation of a buyer agency agreement. Because again, folks can get out of that stuff pretty dagburn easily and show that you didn't bring value, and easily go to your broker and say, you know what, Steve didn't bring value. He's not even there for me. I want to get rid of this contract. But how do they stay stuck to you?
Yeah, for sure. So you've got to do something different. You can't be like everyone else. You can't say, I'm going to put you on a search. I'm going to do something. You've got to do something that's going to stick out in their brain and say, you know what? If I were to go back to a Zillow, if I were to go to an open house, would I find this type of service anywhere else?
Yeah.
So for me, one of those things is this. So I always try and coach my teams as they're leaving a house. First and foremost, we got to get the O word out there. We're going to start talking about offers. It's not going to be in a really heavy sales pitch like, hey, you ready to offer on this house? Yeah. It's going to be much more, hey, let's test the waters. Does this seem like something you want to offer on? I want to be able to start getting that conversation flowing. Yep. If they say yes, then hey, we're in good shape, right? Let's start talking about what that offer may look like and how to work through the process. If they say no, I have an automatic ability of then going straight to this one. Well, do you like the area? Do you like where we are? Do you like the neighborhood? Oftentimes, because they're already there with you, they probably drove it already on Google Maps a couple times. Yeah. They like the area, right? That's why they're there in the first place, or they would have met you on a random 11 o'clock on a Saturday to come and see a house. So when they say yes, what I love to do is just propose this to them. And this is where the stick comes in, right?
Okay.
I'm going to say, hey, on your behalf, I'm going to go ahead and knock on a couple of the doors in this neighborhood and see if anyone else might be willing to sell. So in a tight market, first and foremost, we got to drum up our own inventory anyways, right?
Yes.
But the visual of them watching me go cold knock on a door, it's beyond measure. They're going to look at that and say, who else on earth is going to do what that realtor just did for me? They're going to go cold knock on doors to try and find me a house.
So let's get specific on that. Like we go into 123 Main Street, and they're like, maybe not the right house, but it looks like the right size. The neighborhood is very similar, and you're there with them, and you say, hey, I'm going to go knock on a door. Mm-hmm. So you go over and knock on a door while they're watching you.
Yeah, I'm going to try and get to the door as fast as I can. I want them to physically see me doing it. I don't want to just say it. Yeah. They got to see my action, right? They've got to see my hand hitting the door and knocking as hard as I can and getting somebody out to the door. And then they're going to see me gesturing because I'm a gestury kind of guy as it is anyways, but they're going to see me saying, hey, I was just showing your neighbor's house over here. I didn't know if you'd be willing to sell at this time. They didn't happen to like that home, but they love the neighborhood. And guess what? You might get a pocket listing. You might get a listing. Yeah. You may get a double-ended deal. They might actually say, yeah, I'd be willing to sell. But worst case scenario, you now got a sticky buyer. You got someone that's just said to themselves, that's my realtor.
Yeah, they saw you perform and go above and beyond what most won't do. Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. There's some other things that you share with our team in our meeting this morning where 8 real estate professionals they're still hearing this. They're going, oh my gosh, I'm going to wait until the prices go down. Mm-hmm. How are we having that conversation?
For sure. So there's some kind of banter back there out in the real estate world about hey, marry the house, date the rate. Some people love it, some people hate it, but the concept still applies, right? Uh-huh. So you've got the option of kind of using that in a reverse fashion with buyers. We're hey, you don't want to wait till the pricing goes down. Well, recently, which direction have interest rates been going up? If the price goes down and interest rates go up, you literally didn't save a single penny by quote unquote waiting for the prices to come down. Yeah. So you kind of have to use almost a little bit of fear, FOMO, right? Fear of missing out about hey, if I don't do this now, when's it going to happen? Yeah. The other thing also applies where you just say, Are you trying to tell me right now, if the perfect house popped up on this market, you would wait for somebody else to buy that just because you want prices to come down? When at some point, if you really wanted to, and the rates did come down, you could simply just refinance.
Yeah.
And you start to see like the cogwheels turning in buyers' heads. And you're like, all right, I'm starting to get through. You're starting to understand kind of how this thing works. There's also hesitancy around like the interest rates. We kind of mentioned that a little bit earlier, right? Yeah. Like that's top of mind for everyone. We've had a little dip recently, which hope they keep going that way. Obviously, that's great for our industry, but when you're looking at a little bit of hesitancy there, you're like, you know what? The rates are what they are. They're still at historical lows. Yeah. We're not where we were in the 80s or 90s. And they're like, well, you know, maybe it's a bad time to buy and I'm going to lose some value. If someone's looking at like a first home purchase for strictly, it's again, short term, right? Short-sighted, short-term value, maybe this isn't the best time or best reason.
Or maybe even shouldn't be shopping.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't be shopping at all. But if this is going to be your home, not necessarily forever home, but it's going to be your home for any extended amount of time, real estate over time has done this. Yeah, there's a little bit of these, there's a couple of those, but if you look at where real estate prices were in the 20s and 30s and 40s up to where they are today, this is the direction it goes. There's not a sounder, safer investment. And I'll kind of quote my dad here, who was the original real estate instructor in my family, and he said, there's one thing you should always buy, and it's property, it's land, because they're never making more of it.
Yeah.
It's a finite thing, and once it's all bought up, it's all bought up.
I love that. And I think, you know, if we just look at like, you know, The Big Short, when all the foolishness took place in the 07, 08, 09, 2010, during that time, I just remember specifically like Las Vegas, had a relative who owned a couple condos there, and they were probably worth about like 160 to 210 each. When all the short sales were happening during that time, those things were selling for $30,000 to $50,000, and now they're selling for $400,000 to $500,000. So over that less than 10-year period of time,
yep.
Right? Well, these were selling for that. Now they're selling for even more. So a little bit over 10 years, mm-hmm. we saw the biggest dip ever in the history of the United States, and probably one of the biggest jumps. So overall, we're sitting net super positive with a little bit of time.
Yeah, with any amount of patience at all, real estate's a net positive business. It is. I was in Florida, right? I owned a property. I had a $60,000 quarter acre lot that over the course of 2 months was a $5,000 quarter acre lot. Right now, if that were to list today, it would probably be in the 80 to 90 range. We'd still be $30,000 up, which would be a 50% appreciation over the course of that same 10 to 12 year span. So it's always got to be a long-term view. There's got to be patience with the real estate market. The real estate market's always going to turn. It's always going to trend up. There's never been a long-term trend downwards in real estate in the modern era.
If you're speculating for a year, then you should probably rent anyway.
Yeah.
Or be a speculator.
Yeah.
That's not an investor. That's way different.
Yeah.
So at Zillow, the company's been growing, and you rapidly grew the Flex program over the last few years, and maybe have just re-looked at it to make sure that you have the right partners.
Yeah.
Right? Because we just don't want anybody joining Flex program because you're looking for that best performance, because that's the only way Zillow actually receives a return.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
To be completely honest, it's about two things. At some point, we have to watch our own bottom line. We'd love to be able to just give everyone leads and say,
you're a publicly traded
these
company, so you're accountable to shareholders.
Yeah, we've got people we've got to talk to about numbers at some point.
Right.
And the second thing for me, and what it comes down to, it just kind of goes all the way back to our platform and our key tenet of that we always keep the customer as our North Star. And if we're partnering with the right partners that are doing the same, that's the experience we want. If we're sending leads out just for the sake of sending leads out because we think we can close more deals in total, it's not a huge thing for us. Like, again, we don't talk about what your gross sales is. We talk about how many you've transacted with, how many families you've gotten in homes. The key to home ownership lies in our partners on our Premier Agent platform and being sure we get them connected to the right partners. So is there a tiny bit of a weeding process going out right now? Yes. We probably at some point as we were growing Flex, we're like, let's grow this thing as big as we possibly can. And we took a breath. We're like, all right, we're here.
Yeah.
Now where do we go? We're like, all right, let's make this thing as tight and efficient as we can. If I've got Team A converting at 10% and Team B converting at 5%, I'm not great at math, but I can tell you right now, Team A is going to make me more money. I'd prefer to send them more leads. So that's kind of the direction we've started to go. So some of our lower performing teams might be getting less lead volume. Some of them may have actually personally chosen to leave the platform as it is, which is fine. We want to be sure that everyone that comes through, hits that contact agent button, is getting one of our best teams wherever they're located.
Yeah, I remember many years way before Flex, I was invited with just a handful of folks down in Washington, D.C. I don't know if it was an advisory type of thing that I was involved with. I think it was, actually. And there was this meeting of the minds, and Zillow brought all their leadership there. A lot of those names have changed, but there's a lot of concepts have remained the same. And the real big thing that I always heard was, we want to be able to send all these folks to this portal and have great client care. Because we can't sell them the home. We need incredible partners to help facilitate it.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that hasn't changed. Yeah.
Yeah, that's always going to be a constant. That's a data point you and I look at together on a weekly basis. We call it CSAT, or customer satisfaction. Right. So as some of the listeners may or may not know, what ends up happening after you get connected with a Zillow Premier agent is we do reach out to them. We're like, hey, how was your experience? Like, we are so customer-centric and customer-focused. I recently had a meeting with one of those higher-ups in Irvine, California.
Okay.
And we said, hey, like, what? Because he was a new leader to our department. And we're like, hey, what can we expect? He said, you can expect somebody that's going to run this department that is customer-obsessed. Now, you're not my customer, right? We're partners, so I'm working hand in hand with you. So we're talking about the buyer in this case and scenario.
The end user consumer.
Exactly.
Yep.
So and that becomes incumbent upon me in my role with my partners to say, you know what? Let's be customer obsessed together. And if we can do that, we're going to win more than we're going to lose, I promise.
I mean, we get graded on that on a daily basis. Yeah. We see the fluctuation. I know many times we've been at the 95 level, which is probably one of the, what we talked about.
Yeah, it's really high.
We were at like 96 for one little spat, but 95, we're typically 93, 92, which is super high.
Yeah.
And that means we're getting a good report from the consumer.
Yep.
And then there's also this other thing they measure is like, will the consumer, do they want to work with that agent? And like we score very high in that world too.
Yeah.
And that's typically by providing value. Because if you aren't providing value, you're probably not going to want to work with me. Or I'm not going to work with you, right? But you score that type of stuff, and those are the metrics that you guys use to make sure that like you want to work with us, right?
Yeah.
Or partner with us.
Yeah, and there's key metrics, there's key data points we're always going to look at. So when we take a look at like CSAT, which is our customer satisfaction again, then we look at our work with rate. With that, those are going to be key indicators for us. So those are key indicators that when we send somebody over to you, this person's then clicking a button that says, yes, I plan to work with this person moving forward. Obviously, we like that. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So what it's going to come back to is we can look at data till you and I are blue in the face, and we have, and there's so many different numbers and ways I can pull data about our calls and how things are being measured. What it really comes back to is kind of where we started this whole conversation a little while ago when you said, hey, like, where are we going? Where are we going with internet leads? Where does Zillow want to go? Like, we want to go where we are right now.
Yeah.
We want to make it as easy for people to transact with the best agents. We don't have our own agents. That's you guys. So to kind of put a pretty bow on it, the big 800-pound elephant in the room that is Zillow in the real estate industry, we're here to partner with the best partners and try and carve out our little piece of the pie to be able to make it as easy as we can for home ownership to move forward. We're never going to have everything. We're never going to do everything. We've got huge aspirations. Obviously, we're a big company. We're publicly traded. We want to do everything we possibly can. But moving forward, it's going to be hand in hand with you guys.
Yeah. And we're grateful that we get to partner with you. And again, some of this today was about talking about the partnership that we have, but also about like how others in this industry that we're in can help better serve their clients and getting customer focused, giving them what they want, but also leading them in the transaction too.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that we, or as licensed real estate professionals, struggle with is watch a lot of HGTV. They love showing homes and not really, they love being nice to their clients, but they love getting driven by them and not helping drive the transaction. Yeah. And like helping a client complete and successfully transact That's like a fiduciary responsibility. They went to a site because they had an interest, and eventually it became a commitment, and we want to help get them there. So when you're working with other partners and they have a lower conversion rate, what is the one thing, maybe one or two things that you see that they could do a better job of?
So it's going to start at the top for me. I'm always going to work top down. I'm always going to work top funnel down. So for me, it's going to come back to their intro. Oftentimes when I see a low conversion, I just start working my way back up that funnel. And guess what I see at the very top? Our appointment ask rate is just insanely low. I'll start listening to their calls and I hear a lot of, hey, how are you doing? Yeah, let me talk to you about this house. Let me talk to you about all the great and bad and good things, which is super, super amazing. Super customer service oriented, not great for sales, if we're being completely honest. And this person's long-term goal is to be sold. They didn't come to our website because they're like, hey, I think I might want to do something. So because of that, I'm going to put down my name, phone number. I'm going to talk to Zillow. I'm going to have them ask me questions and then transfer me over to Premier Agent. They didn't go through all of that not to want to buy a house. Yeah. People want to be sold. They are raising their hands on our website saying, please send me to somebody that's going to sell me, that's going to help me get me in the direction I want. Do we want to give them that white glove experience? Do we want to give them all the customer service? Yes. Yeah. We want to do that face-to-face. I'm pretty good on the phones, Jack. I don't know if you know this from doing some of our role plays. I'm decent.
Probably one of the best that I've heard.
I don't know. I'm decent on the phones. Me and you and any other realtor I've ever met is 10 times better in person. It's you start to put a face with the voice. You start to talk about stuff. You get on showing 2 and 3 and 4. We talked about this upstairs. Once we get to showing 4, I know how many kids you got. I know where they're going to school. I know what kind of car you drive. I know you're terrible at coming to complete stop at a stop sign. That stuff seems like dumb, stupid, silly, small, and menial. But it's that sticky stuff again. You're no longer just, oh, that's Jack, my realtor that showed me 123 Main Street. Like, oh, that's Mighty Jack Lehr. He's got the Lehr Podcast that he holds at his office, and he does a really good job talking about this and that. And we shared sports in common. We start finding bonds. Yeah, makes us sticky. Makes us more likely to work together moving forward. So when we get top funnel and we say, hey, how do we get them sticky? Then we can start kind of working our way down. And the biggest area is probably, and I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, is follow-up, where I start to see the miss. Is we get someone excited, and then we run into one roadblock, and we go, oh, shoot. And then we get in our own head as buyer's agents. We're like, you know what? I don't want to bother them. You know what? I don't want to quote-unquote bother them. And I shared this upstairs when we were talking earlier. If we're not bothering, somebody else is.
I think that's the one thing that I heard in our meeting that just really resonated heavily with me, was that we have so much head trash that we say, oh, I don't want to bother them, but yet they were on, because we have access to this data, they were searching for homes between 4 and 7 p.m. after they got off work, and we don't feel like we want to bother them. Well, like I said, if we're not bothering them, somebody else is going to bother them and help them.
Yeah, which is then going to bother my bank account because that commission check's not in my bank.
We get easily sold with the stupidity that goes through our lid.
Yeah, sometimes we just got to get out of our own way.
Yeah,
it's so easy to set up our own obstacles and roadblocks that aren't really there, and we just say, you know what, it's fine. It's just one day. What could happen between now and then? Well, there's a lot that can happen. There's open houses around. There's someone else they could meet at a grocery store that's a realtor. We're everywhere. I don't know if you know this, Jack. Realtors, we're everywhere.
Well, it's funny. So I have a bunch of investment properties that I just put some signs out for sale by owner. We typically do that. We'll pre-market. Almost every call that I got off of that, somebody had an agent. They did not have a buyer agency, because I want to respect that too as a for sale by owner. Like if you have an agent, we'll gladly participate. And I don't think. No, they all had been working with an agent, but they don't have any buyer agency, and they're like, oh, okay, well, are you kidding me? So I think that's one of the things that real estate professionals, how they devalue themselves, is not having respect enough for yourself and going out and saying, hey, this is what it looks like if we're going to work together, and sharing how you get paid, and this is what it looks like for us to successfully work with one another. And we make a commitment by signing an agreement, right? And honestly, if we're not taking great care of you, then come to me and we'll tear that thing up.
Yeah, and there's stuff that we've talked about before where I call it polite education, right?
Yeah.
So you and I have been in real estate for a long time, so when we talk about stuff, we're like, oh, this makes sense. This is how like buyer's agency agreements work. So when people are talking like, hey, I want to talk to the listing agent, I gave you guys a piece about polite education. We're like, hey, just tell them what buyer's agency is. When people hear it, they typically like it. When you tell someone, hey, listing agent works on behalf of the seller, their sole responsibility is to get them the best deal and the most money for their house, whereas me working as your dedicated buyer's agent, my relationship is to you and to get you the best deal on this home. And typically speaking, during these transactions, the seller's going to pay your commission. You don't owe me anything for your services, or for my services, rather.
Yeah.
When people hear it, it's like a light bulb, right? It's like, oh, why wouldn't I use a buyer's agent? That just makes sense. It's a concept that for us seems very familiar, but for a lot of times for first-home home buyers, they watch Showing Alaska, where they go out and see 3 houses with 3 different listing agents. They put in their offer and they move in 2 weeks, and everyone like smiles on their front porch while overlooking the beautiful mountains.
Yeah.
That's not a typical real estate transaction.
No.
Overwhelming majority of real estate transactions are done with a listing agent and a buyer's agent working in concert.
Yeah. It's very simple, and we make it super complex. Like, get together, build a relationship, explain the relationship up front. We call it upfront contracts, and that's a conversation, an agreement, and then get it in writing. If you decide you're going to work together, make that commitment, because most agents that meet with a client that they want to work with you will never have that conversation. And guess what? Then they drive past one of my homes and they say, I'm not working with an agent because I want to get this great deal. I'm going to work with this for sale by owner.
Yep.
And we just lost that opportunity. It is quite remarkable. The devaluing of oneself, we encourage you to, get that buyer agency agreement, explain the relationship up front, and be able to help them all the way through.
Yeah. It provides some value behind it. Like, it can't just be brought out there. You've got to tell them where the value is in it. People love value. If you give someone a value, this is no longer a $5 item. This is now a $10 item. And they're going to buy into it. They're like, you know what? I understand that. You put it in simple, easy terms that made me realize why this is a good thing for me.
Most definitely. Well, we've been with Zillow, I'm going to say, probably
almost 3 years?
Well, Zillow,
before that, yeah.
Zillow Flex since really close to the onset, but
Yep.
Paying for the zip codes, probably the largest investor in the local area by far, and did extremely well with Zillow. So I'm going to say close to 9-10-ish years.
Sounds about right. Yep.
Yeah. And we've had some incredible growth advisors over the years. We had JR recently. JR in the beginning, JR recently. And
You got JR and JR.2.
we did. And we had Kevin Stats when we first came over at Flex. And the funny part was, so I'm saying this, like Zillow, you probably have to approve this podcast before it goes out. But the last time we had our Zillow Flex partner come out with us, JR, the next day he called me and said, Jack, I've been with you guys for so long, but they reassigned me to a different location.
Yeah.
So damn it, Zillow, we love our Flex partner, our growth partner. Okay? Please, keep him with us.
I can promise you, Jack, I'm not asking to leave. If they ever pull me, hopefully it's for a good reason.
He's just saying that. He's going to go, there's ding-dongs over in York, Pennsylvania.
I got an email I got to send real quick. It's like, please remove True Advantage from my account list.
Exactly. Well, I hope that's not the case. Patrick, is there anything else you want to share with those out there?
No. It's a fun industry, right? It's a ride. When people ask me, like, what's real estate like? I'm like, it is the most fun, interesting, goofy, silly, enjoyable roller coaster you ever be on. There's highs, there's lows. Having been in it, like, for my parents being in the industry, like, I remember Christmases that were ridiculous. I remember Christmases that were less ridiculous. Like, that's going to happen. You're not in a salaried role. You're not in a salaried job. You can't expect the same amount of money every year. But the great part about it is we control that part. We get to control what that Christmas looks like based on the effort and work that we put in. I'll kind of end it by saying this, and I think this oftentimes gets attributed to Thomas Jefferson. He said, the harder I work, the more luck I seem to find, which I love.
Yeah.
Because we can control the effort. We can control the input, and then we have to live with whatever the output is.
I love it when people say, our world go, oh my gosh, he's so lucky. And then, just like you stated, I always say preparedness meeting opportunity. Yep. That's my luck. Yep. So I'm super grateful that we got to spend some time together today with my man.
My main man.
So again, I'm super grateful that we got to spend time here with Patrick Carter from Zillow, our growth advisor, Zillow Flex program. If this helped you, resonated, please like, share, subscribe, and I'm super grateful for you. Make your day great.